Hello, and welcome to the 2025 BARS update for GAAP basis governments. Today we will be talking about our annual BARS update. Then I'll briefly mention a future update that should be on your radar, and we'll wrap up with some annual filing reminders. Now let's get started with the 2025 BARS updates. The Chart of Accounts section has several pages in there that we are reorganizing to make it more usable and intuitive. We are deleting the applicability page because that page really talks about accounting principles, which already has its own BARS page. The structure page and revenue expenditure accounts overview page were fairly duplicative, so we are merging those pages. No substantial changes here, just reorganizing it to make it easier to find information. We're also cleaning up some of the BARS code descriptions. When we get help desks or other questions on BARS codes, we look at those descriptions to see if there's a way we can improve them to make it easier to select the right codes. We are also adding a new section for memo codes. Memo codes are special codes that only apply to your proprietary funds, and they are used to report things like debt issuances and capital asset purchases. We talk a little bit about memo codes in the Schedule 01 instructions, but we wanted to expand the memo code information, so we're adding a new section. We also have a video on memo codes on our training and resources page. We also updated the definition of a special revenue fund. Right now it says special revenue funds should be used to account for restricted or committed resources. That kind of makes it sound like when you have a new restricted or committed revenue source that you need a special revenue fund, but that's not true. You can choose to report your restricted or committed revenue streams in your general fund. We are updating the description to say special revenue funds are used to account for restricted or committed resources. It's a small change in wording, but an important clarification. We really don't want government setting up a special revenue fund for every restricted revenue stream. That would be way too many funds to track. Which leads us into this reminder about how many funds you maintain. This is not new guidance, but we've seen a lot of governments with a large number of funds. So we want to remind everyone, you should really only set up the minimum number of funds needed for legal and operating requirements. If you have too many funds, then it leads to inflexibility, unnecessary complexity, and inefficiency. We recommend that governments periodically review your overall fund structure. Look at how many funds you have and what they are being used for. If you have funds with very little activity, maybe it's time to close that fund or treat it as a managerial fund instead of a separately reported fund. We know sometimes governments like to set up funds because it can make it easy to track a specific revenue source and see what it was spent on, which is great for accountability. However, many times accountability can still be achieved through setting up department or program accounts or even managerial funds. Since there aren't a lot of big updates this year, it's a good time to look at your funds and see if your fund structure still makes sense for your activities. Speaking of managerial funds, we are adding a new page in the BARS Manual for managerial funds. We currently mention managerial funds in a few places in the BARS Manual, but the guidance on them is scattered and incomplete. We are consolidating the guidance and improving the managerial fund information in the BARS Manual. We will define managerial funds, discuss how to convert them from a reported fund to a managerial fund, and it'll cover roll-ups and eliminations for managerial funds. In the capital asset sections of the BARS Manual, we are consolidating and moving some things around to put them in the proper accounting versus control sections of the manual. As a reminder, you should periodically review the estimated useful lives of your capital assets. Depreciation expense should be spread out over the entire life of the asset. We would not expect there to be significant amounts of fully depreciated assets. That would indicate that useful life estimates were not periodically reviewed and updated. So if there's a significant amount of fully depreciated assets, that is generally considered an error. The next updates are for the money held in trust BARS page. We are clarifying that when your government holds deposits for your own customers, that is not fiduciary activity. One of the most common examples is when a utility fund requires deposits from customers. That is reported as a liability in the utility fund. It is not custodial activity. Some governments also hold money for others as part of their court function. Sometimes RCW, which is state law, and accounting use the same terms but define them differently. For example, RCW uses the term court trust. However, these court trusts do not usually meet the definition of an accounting trust, which means it is not automatically reported as a fiduciary trust fund. The BARS Manual will also be updated to provide guidance on when a government puts money in a trust. An example of this is a payment to an escrow account. Money in escrow remains in the government's name until it is released, which means it would still be reported by the government. Here is an example of accounting entries for monies held in trust. In our example here, a government is making a capital asset purchase that requires the funds to be held in trust with an escrow agent. When the money moves from the government's bank account to the escrow account, there is no expenditure or revenue entry, only an entry to move cash from one cash asset account to another. This is usually called cash held with fiscal agent. When the purchase is completed and the cash leaves the escrow account, an entry is then made to record the capital expenditure and reduce the cash account. For landfill closures and post-closure costs, we are clarifying that the liabilities must be reported on the Schedule 09, as well as in your financial statements. These liabilities should be reviewed and updated annually, and there should be a note disclosure for the landfill. Our next update is related to the imprest, petty cash, and other revolving funds BARS section 3.8.8. We are going to be adding additional accounting guidance. Your government should also have policies and procedures for reconciling and replenishing this money. The reconciliation and replenishment should happen at least once a month and at year end. The full authorized balances of these accounts should be included in the ending cash balances reported on your financial statements. We're adding an example of the accounting entries for establishing and using and replenishing a petty cash fund. Let's go through the transactions here. The government is setting up the petty cash fund of $1,000 for use by staff to purchase small amounts of office supplies. There is no revenue or expense entry here because you are just moving money from one location, the bank, to another, the petty cash drawer. If you have separate cash general ledger accounts in the accounting system, the only entry to be made is a debit to the petty cash GL account and a credit to the bank GL account. Now, an authorized employee uses $85 from the petty cash to purchase stamps. There's no entry at this point, but remember to retain your receipt for the reconciliation. When you complete the reconciliation and replenish the cash, this is when you record the expenditure. This is why it is so important to reconcile monthly and at year end to ensure you are reporting expenditures timely and in the right period. We also revamped our interfund activities section. This includes the interfund loans page, which now has additional accounting guidance with example journal entries. In the interfund activities overview, we are providing more guidance on the difference between an interfund service versus an interfund reimbursement. It is really important that you understand and classify this activity correctly because the accounting is different. We posted an interfund activities training video a few months ago on our training page. I encourage you to check that video out to learn more about interfund activities. Other pages within the interfund activities section of the BARS include the equipment rental and revolving fund page and internal service fund page. There was some overlapping and duplicate guidance between these pages. In the ER and R fund page, we removed information that applies to all internal service funds since that guidance is on the internal service fund page. We also added some accounting guidance for internal service funds. For example, we clarified that when internal service funds provide services to other funds, it should be reported as a revenue while the other funds report an expenditure or expense. These should not be reported as transfers in or transfers out between the funds. There is also an internal service fund page in the reporting section of the BARS manual. This page includes information on reporting internal service funds, but some of the information was duplicative of what we had in the accounting section of BARS, so we removed the duplication. Right now, the determining fiduciary activities section is in the reporting section of BARS. However, this is more of an accounting topic, so we are moving the page to the accounting section. The guidance is not changing at all. We're just putting it in a different part of the BARS manual. We also have a page in the reporting section called Fund Types. However, this information is already included in the Fund Accounting and Fund Types section, so we are removing this duplicative page. Note 1 is for summary of significant accounting policies. In the section on cash and cash equivalents and investments, we have made a minor update to this section to help clearly explain to readers what is considered a cash equivalent. For your deposits and investment note, there were minor changes to the BARS sample disclosure language. We did spend time updating the instructions to preparers to help make it clear on what needs to be included in this note, including reorganizing and clarifying the instructions. Remember that the amounts listed in the note should tie to the amounts reported in the financial statements. Additionally, the government needs to ensure there is a disclosure for the different deposit and investment risks, such as credit risk, interest rate risk, and concentration risks. For counties, we have cleaned up the external investment pools note to ensure GAAP compliance. This note is required and has separate disclosure requirements than the county's own investments. Pools are required to provide a summarized statement of the pool in the notes. Also note that LGIP is always reported at amortized costs, which has also been updated in the note. Counties, please take some time to review the updated note once you are notified that the BARS manual has been updated. This is a reminder that a new note was added to BARS in December 2024. We early implemented the disclosure for fiscal year 24 reporting. Note that the disclosure is now required as GASB's implementation date has occurred. The certain risk disclosure note is required when a government meets all of the following criteria. The concentration or constraint is known prior to the issuance of the financials. The impact is substantial. Think massive. The event has occurred, begun to occur, or is more than likely to occur within 12 months of the financial statement issuance. The note requires a description of the concentration or constraint, the event that will trigger the impact, and what actions, if any, will be taken or have been taken. As for the risk management note, the disclosure required for discussing the types of risk a government is facing and how the risks are mitigated, such as liability insurance. We are seeing a vast amount of disclosure in this note and want to remind you to review the disclosure requirements. Unless you are a risk pool yourself, the note should not include every layer of the insurance information, nor should it be a copy of the coverage letter from your insurance. Please check out the requirements and let us know if you have questions. For going concern, this note is required if there is a concern about a government's ability to continue as a legally separate entity for a reasonable period of time and continue to meet the obligations of the government. Please note that GASB is working on a new standard related to this topic, severe financial stress, and probable dissolution. The preliminary view was issued earlier this year, and they plan on issuing the exposure draft in 2026. Until then, please continue to evaluate the going concern note for applicability. Some RSI reminders are if you have 10 years worth of data, you can remove the until a full 10-year trend is compiled. Only information for those years available is presented, since we are to the 10-year trend. We have updated the notes to pension RSI in our templates to discuss factors that significantly affect trends for DRS plans. This is a GASB requirement. Every year, the list of all the updates made to the manual can be found in the Alerts and Changes section of the manual. We retain 5 years of changes for your reference. See, the 2025 updates are not bad. We even have time to start thinking about 2026. So let's look at GASB 103. For information on GASB 103, we do have an introduction to the financial reporting model improvements in our e-training library, which is located on our training and resources page. This covers specific information about the changes from 103. Moving on to annual filing system reminders and updates. Did you know that you can unlock your annual filing up to the point in which an audit report for that fiscal year has been issued? This includes any audit type, financial, fraud, attestation, etc. When logged into the system, if you see that the unlock is blue, you have the power to unlock your report. If the unlock is gray, you will need to reach out to your audit team to discuss why you are unlocking and get the okay from them for the filing team to unlock the report for you. On the Schedule 09 step with fiscal year 2024 filing, you were asked if your government has a continued compliance requirement deadline related to your outstanding debt. This is a yes or no question. If a government has a requirement to provide audited financial statements to your debt investors, such as uploading your financials to Emma or providing them to a bank, you would answer yes. If you say yes, you will be asked to put in the reporting deadline date, the date your audited financials are due to the investor. This will help us in scheduling your audit to assist in meeting your deadline. We are working on removing the maturity due date column from the schedule of liabilities, also known as the Schedule 09. Once the removal is completed in the system programming, we will be updating the Excel template. Now, some reminders for you all. In the filing system, we have a virtual assistant and live chat feature. Please note that the virtual assistant is available all year and will provide you with resources to the most frequently asked questions. Our live chat feature, where you can chat with our filing support team, is only active during filing season. If the virtual assistant is unable to provide you with the resources you need, there is an option to send an email to our filing team. Our final reminder is for cities and counties. If you update the Schedule 01 in the filing system after you have completed the road street report, the updated Schedule 01 will overwrite the road street report. This means the original data you inputted into the road street report will be removed and you will need to update the report again. We recommend downloading the road street report for your records in the event you need to make changes to the Schedule 01 and must re-import the revenue data related to roads and streets. Our filing team provides several resources for you, including recorded trainings to walk you through the filing system. Visit sao.wa.gov, BARS and Annual Filing, Training, e-learnings to check out our annual filing system library of videos. Thank you for taking the time today to learn about the 2025 BARS updates.